It is 6:21 on a rainy Monday evening in August. Thank you for joining us. So, sugar, we've talked about this a lot. I've had the guest on several times here, Dr. Gerald Edelman. He's the author of the book Sugar Rehab. The website is sugarrehabbook.com. And Dr. Edelman, thank you for joining us this evening.
How are you, Mike?
Good. Since we've chatted about this, I do notice sugar a lot more. I was just on a trip with my family, actually, my in-laws and niece and nephew and so on. A lot of Gatorade drinking. Of course, I picked the bottle up, I think 33 grams of sugar in each one. They seem to be drinking it right down without any ill effect. What do you make of that as the man behind Sugar Rehab?
So when you say without any ill effects, what do you mean?
Well, first of all, they seem to really enjoy it, and they, at least for the next 48, 72 hours I was around them, they seem to be okay.
Right. The problem with sugar is, number one, there's a lot of hidden sugar that we're not aware of. And I don't think many people know where to look on the ingredients label.
Right. Now you talk about 2 grams of sugar, so 33 grams of sugar, right? That's a huge pile of sugar, right?
Yeah, so 33 grams of sugar is equivalent to about between 6 and 7 sugar cubes.
And that's in a Gatorade bottle.
That's in a Gatorade bottle. So the short-term effect of sugar, they may get away with it like you're talking about, but the long-term effect is the obesity problem we're dealing with, and diabetes in children, and some of the things you and I have spoken about in the past. Mm-hmm. So being aware of it is really the key, and I don't think most people are aware of it.
Now do you? I don't think they are, and even when I've talked to them about it, it doesn't seem, they seem to kind of understand it, but it doesn't stop them. You're an oncologist, you deal with cancer patients, you treat them. Is this really universally believed by doctors? Would you say that sugar is a problematic thing for us?
Yes. And the only difference is to what degree does a doctor think it's a problem. So for me, I use the rule of 80%. 80% of disease in the United States is from being overweight. 80% of being overweight has to do with hidden sugar and sugar in our food. And 80% of losing the weight battle is to eliminate sugar from your diet, like we've talked about. 20% is probably weight training or some form of exercise.
You don't bump into doctors that tell you really are overstating the dangers of sugar.
No, I don't. I really don't. In fact, what I'm experiencing, Mike, is that there's a growing number of doctors, in fact, a lot of the talk host doctors, that are catching on to this. In fact, I'm seeing more and more emphasis on sugar as a toxin and as a disease causer.
Okay, but the truth is that even when we understand this, from what I see, it's hard to actually stop eating sugar substantially, at least in the ways you're talking about. What is it that makes it hard for people to really give this thing up?
Well, I think the biggest problem is it's cultural. In our society, they just dump a ton of sugar into our food. So you have to be aware of it, and you have to select foods that don't have a ton of sugar in them, and that's what Sugar Rehab, my book, does for you. The other reason is because sugar is addicting, and you asked me, what colleagues and what other doctors are thinking, and I think I'm making a true statement right now. I think other physicians are catching on to just how addicting sugar is and how toxic and damaging it is over time, Mike. We're not talking about whether whether in a day you're gonna do damage. We're talking about over time. This excess sugar really is being stored by the body in the toxic ways we think of that cause diseases of all kinds.
So we got sugar, carbs, and protein and fat, of course. But what is it about sugar that makes it so bad for the body?
Well, I think that the primary reason why it's so bad for the body is because it makes you secrete insulin when you get a sugar spike. And the insulin is a damaging hormone in that amount. Right, we need a certain amount of insulin to regulate blood sugar. But when we get these spikes that the American diet causes, you have to spike your insulin, and it's a damaging hormone.
When you say spike, if you're not eating sugar and then you eat a whole bunch of sugar, how much does it go up? 10-fold, 20-fold? What's the number?
Well, your blood sugar level normally is about 100, and we don't worry about the units. Let's just say it's about 100. After you eat something, after you drink this Gatorade, your blood sugar could go up to the 300 or 400 level.
But that's when the insulin kicks in to bring it down, right?
Correct.
So are you saying your blood sugar will actually hit that 300, 400 level for a healthy person?
Yes.
Wow. And how long does that last?
It's very rapidly regulated by the insulin spike. So this stuff's all happening at the molecular level really fast, right? It's hard for us to imagine. It's like us imagining the cosmos and how big it really is.
But why don't we feel that? If we have this chemical, why don't we actually feel kind of this effect in ourselves to tell us, yuck, I don't want to do this to myself?
Well, I think it's the same reason why heroin addicts get addicted. They're addicted. We're addicted because our foods and society make this happen all the time, so we're used to it. But, think about it. If you think about it, so let's say you eat some donuts in the morning and you skip the protein. I mean, you will get hypoglycemic because the insulin spike causes the opposite. It causes a valley in your blood sugar, and then your body craves something, typically sugar, right? So if you're really sensitive, if you become aware of what I'm saying and just watch it in yourself, you can see it happen. You can feel it.
I'm talking to Dr. Gerald Edelman, author of the book Sugar Rehab, the website sugarrehabbook.com. So artificial sweeteners, I want to get your thoughts on that because I know you're not opposed to using them. Do you think there's anything dangerous about long-term use of artificial sweeteners if you're walking away from sugar?
Well, let me answer that with logic. Number one, if we both agree that obesity is 80% of the cause of disease, then we can also agree that we need tools to not be obese. Would we agree on that?
That sounds fair. Some would say, well,
fair, right?
Some people say, hey, drink water. I guess that's their solution. But go ahead.
Sure. But my point is that I think these so-called artificial sweeteners like a diet soda or whatnot, for the average person that's overweight is a tool. It will help you lose weight. Now, Mike, I've come up with this concept of nutritional neurosis, which I think our society is creating nutritional neurosis because we're being bombarded by so many opposing and different thoughts about everything nutritional. I think there's a lot of things that are urban myths that are taken as validated, which have not been validated.
Give me one.
Artificial sweeteners.
Okay, the fact that they're potentially bad for you, is that it?
Yes, it's an urban myth. It's a hypothesis that some folks have a bias against the artificial sweeteners. And my point is that when you really sift through the data, you can't find scientific validation for anything that they say.
Okay, like aspartame, you hear that can cause problems in your brain over time. Is that false?
No, I think aspartame can cause headaches. And for certain people, they will experience the headache. They shouldn't use aspartame. That's a symptom, not a disease.
Okay, but in terms of what it does to you in the long term, are you saying artificial sweeteners, long-term use, it can work? Is that it?
I'm saying that there is no data that says that long-term use of artificial sweeteners causes disease. That's my statement.
Well, what about we hear this all the time, that artificial sweeteners can lead you to want to eat sweets. I've seen that in studies. Have you seen this also?
Yes, I have, and I'm glad you're asking me about it because that's a really good example. So there's this theory that they cause the brain to anticipate sweetness, and the anticipation makes the pancreas secrete insulin. Actually, when you go through PublicMed, which is where you can find all the actual research, and you type in for the answer to that, you'll find that the studies show the complete opposite. They do not cause an insulin spike, and they do not cause an anticipatory increase in your blood sugar. So people need to differentiate between urban myths that are biased versus validated facts. So the answer to your question, long term, we don't know what artificial sweeteners do, but why come out and say they cause disease when we know obesity causes disease?
Right. One last thing, the fruit thing, very sweet fruit. Is there any danger in eating, let's say, 4 or 5 bananas in a shot?
I don't know if you're referring to Banana Girl, but there was this YouTube thing going around where somebody ate a crazy number of bananas.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, but in general, fruit, sweet fruit, can that cause an insulin reaction?
Yes, it can. And there's two damaging things from sweet fruits to the average American that's battling weight. The first is the glucose. That causes the insulin that you and I were discussing and the damage that causes. The other is fructose, another sugar in a fruit, which goes to the brain and tells the brain that you're still hungry.
Okay,
so you get a double whammo.
With that, it almost sounds like your perspective is that the human body wasn't really made for sugar in substantial quantities. Is that right?
I think that's a true statement. Yeah,
and
I definitely.
We just kind of ended up here. Everyone you know, do they subscribe to your beliefs, and can they do this, or do you have close people to you that just cannot get rid of this?
Yeah, so I have a lot of patients that are really catching on to this, and I've got friends that have caught on.
You must have patients that tell you, Doc, I can't do that. I need my sugar, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, and you know, I've used those rare people to come up with creative ways to help people stop the craving, because I think you asked me this before and we talked about it, and there's a lot of really cool things that we probably don't have time to discuss tonight.
Right, but
I've got some solutions for this, for the cravings that you and I talked about.
Well, look, the truth is you can find a lot of the information in the book. The book is called Sugar Rehab, Staying Fit and Young by Overcoming Your Secret Addiction to Sugar. The website, sugarrehabbook.com, sugarrehabbook.com. It's Dr. Gerald Edelman. Doctor, always great having you on. Thank you.
Mike, I really appreciate it. Thanks.
We'll talk some more.